Welcome to Homocide, the podcast. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Brandon.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
I'm good. Anna's also here with us. Hi, Anna.
Hi, everybody.
How are you?
I'm so good.
Good. We also have an audience today.
I know, our second episode, and we already have an audience.
I know, we're so excited. So we have Ethan, who is behind camera. Hi, Ethan.
Hello.
And then we have our friend Gigi here, who's just lovely.
From far in the corner.
Far away. And then we, of course, have Marty, Miss Martina, and KK's, our cat and dog, here with us. So I'm excited for this week's episode. But Brandon, you did something fun today. Tell everyone.
I did. It feels so random to talk on a murder podcast, but I went to a sewing class.
That's not weird. You're gay.
It was fun.
Oh, no.
I'm sure that was an accident.
Yes, okay. I mean, I think it could be both of those. But yeah.
It was actually really fun. I did a sewing class once before where I went with our friend Kelda and Brandon in Denver, and it was...
Oh, it was Brandon.
It was Brandon,
I thought you were talking about yourself. I'm sorry.
No, I don't typically talk about myself in third person, but I went to this class and it was at this older woman's basement of her home.
Oh.
And it was really creepy. It was like someone's grandmother's home. It was really fun. We had a good time, but it wasn't really a sewing class. This one was actually like a class where they actually went through the machine and talked about the machine and what it does and like the technical side of it, which was super cool.
How many times did your needle stop? You know, when you're sewing and your needle's like fucker and it comes undone and it stops working? Is that just me? No,
when
like
it
your
comes
needle.
unthreaded?
That's what it's called.
Yeah, just once.
Oh, aren't you talented? I love that. I love that you're doing that.
But at the same time, you were doing something completely different than I. What were you doing today?
I was in improv again today, which all three humans that are here besides Brandon are in my class, and they fucking killed it today. And it was a good class. It was good. It was fun. And my voice, I am not in puberty. My voice is weird right now because, oh wait, did I have vodka? Oh, I may have had a drink and it might have had vodka and I'm allergic to it and I lose my voice. So
this should be a fun one.
I don't know what I ordered. Fuck.
So you're going to be like a prepubescent.
Yeah, but I just got over being sick, so I don't know. It's probably the vodka thing. Anyway, we'll see how this goes. So welcome. We're excited. We have 2 new murders for you. So like we talked about last time, our flow is that Brandon comes to the table with a murder that I don't know about. I come to the table with a murder that he does not know about, and then we talk about it.
Except this is the second episode that I know your murder.
Brandon, stop spilling beans and giving my secrets away.
Either way, it's a good one. I'm excited for it. Today's episode is on New York murders, specifically to New York City.
New York City, yes. So before we dive into the murders, remember that this is episode 2, which launches on October 31st with 2 episodes. We were going to do 3 originally, and then Anna, our producer's like, that's aggressive because our episodes are too long. So,
but we also didn't get the last story done yet. So
also calling me out again because Brandon did get it done. I did not.
No, it's almost done.
Oh,
but I've been further along. But that's like typical you and I relationship.
What?
I'm a little bit more like planned out, and you're more like, yeah, let's just do it now.
I'm more aloof.
Yeah, it's a good word.
I know. All right. Well, we're on several places, but you can listen to us anywhere that podcasts are shown.
Aired.
And then we're on YouTube, which is where you can see this lovely video of us making faces and all this weird shit, because that's what we do. And follow us on social media. Boom. All right.
Done.
Brandon, are you ready for your episode?
I'm super excited for mine.
All right. Let's dive in.
All right, cool. I said I'm already ready already.
Brandon, you know I love that, right?
I know you do. That's why I said it.
Okay. My best friend that unfortunately died by suicide, she used to come over anytime that I would see her and we would, whatever, she would always say, I'm all ready. And it was the fucking cutest thing. And I love that you just said that.
Well, we say it all the time, so it's not like it's that much of a surprise.
But it started with her, so I just
It did. Sorry, I stole it.
You steal all the things. Okay, go ahead. Tell me everything.
Okay, cool. So this time I picked an even older story than before.
Than the one in Tampa?
Yes. So my New York story is not one of this century. Or the last one, technically. It was 19. I just say it's not the last century. I'll just read what I have. I do better with that. For the most part. Okay, so it was an ordinary day on July 28th, 1841. When a few men were walking near Sybil's Cave in Hoboken, New Jersey, right off of the Hudson. And Sybil's Cave is actually Hoboken's oldest man-made cave designed with a Gothic arc-style entrance in 1832 by the Stevens family, who wanted to take advantage of the natural spring on the property, which I thought was interesting because it's kind of, I think from what I know, it's a little bit more run down now, but I never would have thought that there would be a natural spring right off of
in Hoboken, right?
Hudson.
Yeah. Are springs
Which is
a
known
thing
to
in
be
New York?
gross.
I don't know.
Well, while these guys were looking at the Hudson water from Sybil's Cave, they noticed something large floating in the Hudson River. And so the men grabbed a rowboat to check out what they were looking at. So as they reached the object, it was pretty obvious what it was. So floating in the water, covered in visible bruising, a torn dress and a hat, and a tight strip of cloth tied around her neck was the body of Mary Cecilia Rogers.
Mary. Oh, bless her heart.
I know.
She was floating
She was floating.
in the Hudson.
In the Hudson.
This was in the 1800s?
1841. So, I mean,
God, that did not change.
Hudson has been active with dead bodies for a very long time.
Since the Europeans came over and stole the lands.
Yeah. So all those people that are jet skiing in the Hudson and doing
Oh my
all
God,
these
our
things.
classmate Nicole. We should ask her if she's seen dead bodies. Okay.
Do you want to give context to that? Because now just some random person named
Shit,
Nicole
yeah.
would
Okay,
be in
so
the water.
this girl that we, lovely woman that we do improv with, works for a company that does like jet skis and all that kind of stuff on the Hudson. Jet skis and like a boat with hot tubs? I don't know. We have to do it, obviously.
It's like yachting.
Yachting.
Yes.
Right? I don't know.
I think. I don't.
Or a ship.
It's a ship.
She's got a ship
She's
on
got
the
a
Hudson.
ship.
Yeah.
She is a captain of a ship. That's what we're going to go with. Okay.
Perfect. So this is the story of Mary Cecilia Rogers. So born in 1820 in Lyme, Connecticut, which I believe that's Lyme disease comes from Lyme, Connecticut. I'm pretty sure that might need to be fact checked, but I'm
Maybe they
like 98% sure that's true.
Isn't Lyme I don't know. Keep going.
Anyways, if I made that up, I'm sorry. Okay,
Somebody
so
will
born
tell
in
you.
1820 in Lyme, Connecticut, Mary grew up as an only child. So when she was 17, her father, James Rogers, died in a steamboat explosion, causing Phoebe Rogers to become a widow at a really early age. So this was back in the 1800s, and being a woman in that time was worse than it is now, although there's a lot of things that needs
pretty
to change
shitty now,
right now
too.
for women as well. But James was the breadwinner, so they had to figure out what to do from that financial burden pretty quickly. So eventually they ended up migrating to New York City in 1837. Phoebe began to run a boarding house off of Nassau Street in the now financial district of Manhattan to make ends meet, and Mary would help. So now every source I read, which I read a lot of sources, and since this is an older story, there was a lot of different information, so I kind of just tried to wrap it all together.
Yeah.
But every source I read talked about how gorgeous Mary grew up to be. So she was tall and slender with jet black hair. Some people would talk about Mary as if she was naive and unaware of how dangerous people were in New York and how dangerous the world can be in general. Like she was a meek and timid girl. So others talked about her, how she was working class, she was single, she was a virgin, yet she was sexually available. And sources stated that some considered her a whore because although she was a virgin, she had seductress-like qualities that people thought of her as sexually available.
Okay, can we address that real quick?
Yeah.
Sexually available?
Yeah, right.
In the 1800s.
Yeah,
That's really fucking weird.
yeah.
Are you sexually available?
I mean, it's a weird way to put it. I feel
I
like
know.
everybody could be
Who
sexually
says that?
available,
Are you
but,
sexually...
but just because you look attractive doesn't mean that you're just off sleeping with a bunch of people. And
I know. Well, and it's interesting that you're saying that she was meek and all these other things. Like, did people label her as that? Or
yeah,
was she
so
actually...
well, people labeled her as that, but she had a very composed demeanor, and but because she was attractive, although she was a virgin, people thought of her as a seductress. So they thought that she could have been a whore, that it was all a lie and all that kind of fun.
Yeah, all right.
Fun stuff that we label women that we still do now. So
Sexually available.
yeah. And then one thing that played a big role in what people thought, which I didn't see this note right before you asked that question, was what played a big role is that she was really independent. She had a really independent nature for a woman at that time, being that her mom was widowed. She was doing her own business, that Mary just gradually became more independent. So when Mary was 20, she ended up meeting a man named John Anders, what is also now the Tribeca area, so in the same area that she was in. Okay. So this is fun. Amazed by her looks, he propositioned Mary to work at his store to basically be an attraction, to lure men in.
Because she looked sexually available.
Yes, and she was attractive, and she had this like aura around her that would kind of bring in people. Kind of like what my mom says about you. You have like this aura that people are just attracted to, even
I
like
don't know
the
about
strangest people.
Yeah, Brandon's mom does say that a lot about me, that there's people, okay, there's two things. People either really fucking hate me or they really like me. But a lot of times I have a lot of people that come up to me.
Like you'll get groped in the middle of nowhere. People will like touch your beard or
Has happened in Target.
do some weird shit to you.
Remember that when that happened at Target? Yeah. I don't think it's that way. Anna, do you find that to be something about me?
What? That people will grope you?
Yes. Like we were at a parade and
I
this
find
person.
you to be groped a lot.
You seem gropeable.
we were at a parade in Tampa and somebody came up to him who was walking in the parade, came up just to him and like pet his face and walked away.
not
No,
okay.
they also kissed me.
Oh, he kissed you too.
Yeah, not on the lips because I was like, ew. But no, there was this one time that we were in Target and I was walking in an aisle and there was a kind of a weird guy in the next aisle. Brandon was with me. And
you could hear him talking, and it was one of those situations where you're like if he comes over here and we show him any kind of attention, he will
something will happen.
just talk to us.
So we like go to the next aisle and then he's in that aisle and we're like, fuck. So then he sees me and beelines it towards me and he's like, can I touch your beard? And I was like,
very weird.
what do I? And I had a very long beard at that time that was like luscious. And I was like,
Kevin said,
okay.
Sure.
And so he started petting my beard.
Yeah. Well, he's saying that his wife won't let him have a beard.
Correct.
Because she doesn't like how scratchy it is.
Yep.
Wait,
And
how old was this guy?
He was
82. I don't know.
What?
He was probably
older.
late 70s, early 80s.
Sure. Yeah. And then he starts getting a visible boner.
And he said, I have to stop. I'm enjoying
getting
this too
too-
much.
I think he said getting
I'm
too
getting too
excited.
excited. Yeah.
And I
No,
was
I
like,
feel like some old people just get to a point where they feel like anything they do is okay, and
Yeah,
actually, like they should be like put in a corner and told to sit in timeout. Like that's
Like
I
maybe
completely
don't go
agree.
out in public.
yeah, or don't like touch people's beard. This has happened actually several times, which is
has.
why I have it a little bit shorter now because it was down to like my nipples. Basically, it was quite long and gorgeous, but people kept touching it in a really awkward. Turn your phone off, Brandon.
I'm so sorry.
But people kept touching it really weird. But yeah, I don't totally think that your mom's right. But Brandon's mom always says that there's something
People
about
are
me
just
that people are
attracted,
just
yeah.
attracted to it. I'm like,
Well,
okay. Anyway,
Just like
Same as
the
Mary.
guy touching you in Target, men would come just to see Mary. Because of the nature of the business, being a cigar shop in the 1800s, it was kind of a shadier kind of place to go to. You're not meeting the greatest people. Knowing how shady the clients was, Phoebe, Mary's mom, was absolutely against it. So Phoebe had a right to be wary because Anderson's shop was a popular one. It was commonplace for people from all different kinds of backgrounds. Now, it wasn't just dangerous people like criminals and everything like that. There was a lot of notable people that would go there too. So it was popular for Edgar Allan Poe and Washington Irving. So some popular writers at the time. Mary ended up persuading her mother to allow her to go work there. And so she ended up working there anyways. So Mary attracted many people and men would flirt with her all day. And it was published that there would even be times where people would just stand in the store all afternoon just to exchange glances with her, which is super fucking creepy.
I wonder if this is how celebrities feel.
Probably.
Right.
But this is also like has to be a little bit worse in the sense that there's no TV, there's no photos, there's nothing besides actually going somewhere to creep somebody out like that.
God, that's fucking weird.
Yeah. And it was said that Mary held herself with a modest decorum. And although she was friendly and she was very nice to all of the people that came in, but if somebody was advancing on her too much, she would not be afraid to tell them and like put them in her place.
Love that.
Because she was an independent woman. Independent woman. We'll try that one more time. Thank you very much.
Leave that in.
Like I literally said after our last one, I'm like, I hope I do better this time.
Because you
just
couldn't,
stumbling on
what
my
was
words
it?
so
You
much.
couldn't say statistically, right?
Yeah,
That's not funny. And then what was the other one? That
Tragedy.
tragedy.
Oh,
you almost did it again.
Yeah. Anyways, so now at some point in time, Mary meets a man named Daniel Payne, and I could not find any information on where they met, except for that he may have possibly been somebody that was staying in the boarding house that her mother ran.
Okay.
But they ended up dating and getting engaged. So within this time frame, she met this man, Daniel, and got engaged. On July 25th, Mary left the city telling Daniel that she would be visiting her aunt and a few other family members that day who lived on Bleecker Street. That evening, there was a really bad thunderstorm that hit. And so when Mary didn't show up the next day, her family wasn't really too concerned about where she was, because it was storming and they were like, yeah, we probably wouldn't come home either.
Where would they have went?
Well, I think it's really interesting because at the same time, this was at the 1800s. There was no mass transit. There was
sure. I would
cars.
feel like I would be
you would
more
have
concerned
to physically walk or get a horse or do that kind of stuff. So they thought that she would just, because of the storm, stay.
She was hanging out
at her family.
Oh God,
with her family.
Oh yeah, because she was like
yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Which again, it's all in technically the financial district now, so
really
it's not really that far. So I thought that was interesting. But this was also before like cell phones or geolocation, so it's not like she could go like
well before
find my friends and see where Mary was. But this also wasn't the first time Mary had gone missing or didn't show up when she was supposed to. So just a couple of years earlier, on July 15th, 1833, it was reported that Mary had disappeared from their home. So after going missing, Phoebe said that they had found a suicide note stating that she had a fixed and unalterable determination to destroy herself. Yeah, weird. That's very...
Okay.
Yeah, again, 1800s.
God, the way that they wrote it is so compelling. Yeah.
I know. So, however, the next day, I saw some sources that said the next day, some said a week later, Mary reappeared saying that she ended up going to Brooklyn or the country. Again,
maybe
mixed
Brooklyn
information.
was like the country.
But I literally have a note in here saying that Brooklyn was probably considered the country back then, that it probably really wasn't anything around. But she said she ended up going to Brooklyn to visit a friend, and the note was a hoax.
Oh, so she didn't physically show up. The note did.
No, she went missing. They couldn't find her, but her mom found a note that she had written. Claiming that she was going
to Brooklyn or
to die by suicide.
Oh, fuck.
So the hoax was that she wrote this note. She was really just at a friend's house in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Well, this next time was a little bit different. The day after Mary's second disappearance, everyone was expecting her to come home. When it got later in the evening the next day, Daniel and Phoebe got super concerned, and Daniel decided to head down to Bleecker Street to find her, which when I first was starting to do my research, I had typed it in here like, hey, they just reached out to find if Mary was there. And I was like, wait, I should probably actually clarify that they had to go physically walk down there because there was no phones. There was nothing that they could easily connect them with. Yeah. Daniel was a little bit baffled when he got there because when he knocked on the door and saw Mary's aunt, her aunt let him know that they were not expecting Mary and she never showed up at the home that day. When Mary went missing, people noticed. Her coworkers in the cigar shop, her friends, her family, and even patrons of the shop. Like I said before, a lot of people hung out at the shop, including reporters. So various New York City newspapers started to have stories start going out about the missing cigar girl.
But Mary is the one who told her husband that she
was going
to meet her family at Bleecker Street.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So Mary told her mom and Daniel. Well, she told Daniel, her fiance, that she was going to her aunt's and family's house on Bleecker Street.
Yeah.
There was the storm. She never came home the next day.
I got it.
Okay. I'm just trying to spell it out for you to help.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyways, then 3 days after she went missing, Mary's body was found in the Hudson. So Daniel was the last person to ever see her alive. Once the body was discovered, the media coverage grew even more. They coined her as the beautiful cigar girl, and Mary's story became local and national news, and they plastered her face all over the front pages of the newspaper. One story of the New York Herald even had a testimony of her condition from the coroner, which I thought was really interesting, and his name was Richard Cook. And I'm going to try my best to read this one, because it's just interesting, because it's also the coroner. I believe it's him speaking as he's looking at her too. So the face was, what is this, Kevin? Suffused, yeah. I'm really not that awful.
I actually don't know that word, but
her face was suffused with dark blood, bruised blood. There was a frothy blood still issuing from her mouth. It says issuing, but I wanted to say oozing. Her face was swollen. There was an ecmos mark about the size of the shape of a man's thumb on her right side of her neck near the jugular vein, and 2 or 3 ecmos marks on the left side resembling the shape of a man's finger, which led me to believe that she had been throttled and partially choked by a man's hand.
What does it mean to be throttled?
I don't know, because I feel like we know many people who would love to be throttled.
Oh my God. You said throttled, like thrown across the room.
I know. I was thinking like shake.
I assumed like throttled as in like took her and like pushed, like threw her up against something.
Bob,
to choke
who
her.
do we know that wants to be
I'm
throttled?
Just kidding.
Oh.
I am just kidding.
Oh my God. I'm like, ooh, what? Tell me the Jews. I think it's interesting though that they found her and she still had shit coming out of her mouth even though she was in the Hudson.
Right. But I'm sure it was just, it says it was frothy blood. So I'm assuming it was like a mixture of like
ew,
blood and Hudson water
River
and
trash.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Then I have the dress was much torn. The outer dress was torn. A long slip, say a foot wide, was torn up from the bottom of the frock to the waist. The dress immediately beneath the frock in between the upper petticoat had a piece torn clean off its garment, about a foot or 18 inches in width. This piece was torn very evenly and with great care, commencing at the bottom of the garment. The same piece was afterwards tied around her mouth with a hard knot at the back part of the neck, I think to smother her cries.
Oh my God, Mary.
I know, right? The piece of fine lace trimming I spoke of, I observed a crease around the neck. Passing my hand behind her ear, I accidentally felt a small knot and found that piece of lace, which I supposed to have the trimming of her lace collar, was tied so tightly around her neck as to have been hidden from sight in the flesh of the neck. This was tied in a hard knot under the left ear. This would have strangled her.
Oh my God.
Right? And that's like just the report from the coroner, which I thought was interesting since there's not much that there's some news articles and things that I could find, but I just thought that was super interesting that that was noted from the coroner.
I'm kind of still stuck on the thumbprint on her neck.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of force.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it was just like wrapped around her neck.
God, that's so rude.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, killing is rude.
I agree.
I feel like we can come up with a stronger word than rude. For that.
I do like rude. Okay.
So right after the murder, Daniel was interrogated. Obviously, he was the fiance. He's going to have to be. But after their questioning, they just dismissed him as a suspect. And then after the questioning, the police didn't have much to go off of. There was actually a bit where I saw that there was like over a week where the police didn't really have anything to say to people. And people were like, what the fuck's happening?
Yeah.
But there were some conspiracies and leads that were either not looked into or dropped. So I have 7 of them here because there was quite a bit. First, the first theory was that Mary had a failed abortion attempt. There's theories that Mary's body was dumped by the local abortionist, Madame Restel. And I'm sure I'm not saying that right. It's super French.
Madame.
But after the failed procedure. So allegedly that they had a bad abortion, threw her in the Hudson.
What? Why would that?
Really weird
Why
theory.
would the abortionist kill her in that way?
Right?
Well, and I think it was like an accident. Like they were trying to give her an abortion. And
they accidentally strangled her.
Right? Oh, yeah. How they would have those marks. Well, that's why the police ended up taking that and being like, well, it doesn't match the
Maybe
the
that's
crime
not
itself.
accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Weird.
I'm just having a
I'm
bad
so
image
sorry
of-
that we ruined your abortion. We're going to kill you now.
Yeah, I'm just going to strangle you.
fuck is that?
I'm going to throttle you against
Mary.
I know, I'm sorry to laugh.
I know.
Anyways, the next one. People believed that something must have happened when she disappeared the first time, that it wasn't a hoax that she left and came back, that it was a hoax that she came back, meaning that they believe she actually wanted to die by suicide, but that she either got scared or didn't happen so that she came back. And then they believe that this could have been potentially her going back and actually dying by suicide. Which again doesn't make sense, which is why it didn't.
It doesn't. Yeah.
It didn't pass through the police because
It's
they're
really
like, this
weird
doesn't make sense.
to try to die by suicide and choke yourself.
Well, I don't think
And
you
then
can.
Rip up your. I don't know.
I
There's
know.
just a lot
But
of
this
details that
these
are
were
not
conspiracy
matching.
theories made by people
Yeah.
that weren't the police. So it was people who were coming up with ideas of what could have happened. People still believed it was Daniel after his questioning. What adds to some odd speculation of this was that sometime after the death of Mary, Daniel's body was found on a bench near where Mary's body had been discovered, laying on a branch in the Sybil's cave area. And there was a note stating, "To the world, here I am on the very spot. May God forgive me for my misspent life."
Oh, Daniel.
Yeah. So that night, Daniel took an overwhelming amount of poison and died.
He lost
With
the
a-
love of his life.
Yeah, with a very
He killed the love of his life.
right. So it's a very vague suicide note, right? So
Sure.
people either thought that it was admission to guilt, that he actually killed her, and that he's going to her spot because he's having a hard time, and then did that. But then other people thought that it was just from the grief. And could you not hit things,
sorry.
please? Thank you. Or they thought that it was him grieving his fiance's death.
Yeah.
Number 4, a gentleman named James Finnegan was arrested for the alleged merger. the murder of the alleged murder, it was said that the police arrested the 2 gang members who confessed to being part of the crime and implicated James. And when they found James, James was randomly wearing one of Mary's rings, which didn't help the matter. But then after further investigation, the case against James was dropped and he was not convicted of anything. So then there was also talks of it being possible gang violence some days after they found the body. The rest of Mary's clothing and belongings were discovered in the woods near where the body was found in the water. So this was a bit surprising to some people because there was an investigation in the area. And so there was people everywhere. And this was also at a time where there was no TV, there was nothing. So people actually went to go see where the crimes were instead of going to jump on a podcast to listen to two homos talk. They actually went to the place to see, and you would have.
I would have won.
You would have won. Yeah. People were thinking that the clothing was placed there after the murder and that it was an actual murder because of that.
Yeah.
And then there was another story that an anonymous man wrote a letter to the coroner because at one point the police opened it up to, which I don't know if I have this in the rest of the story. I think I took this out, but the police opened up the search and they put out in the newspapers. They were asking for anybody who had any information, and they offered an award for whoever gave information on the case. However, they also opened it up to people who could be implicated in the crime and said that they would give them immunity if they just told them who the murderer was. So if you weren't the murderer but you were part of it, say you were part of a group of people, and you told them who actually did it, you would have.
Interesting tactic.
A couple days after that, somebody wrote an anonymous letter to the coroner, which I thought was interesting that they sent it to the coroner, not the police. But they said that he was in the area in that evening and he saw a boat pulled to shore from the New York side containing 6 rough-looking men and a well-dressed girl who he recognized as Mary. They came to shore and walked to the nearby woods. Eventually, a second boat arrived with 3 other men, but they said that they were well-dressed men. These 3 guys were well-dressed. And eventually somebody comes out of the woods, and it's alleged that he heard them asking if she came on her own accord or if they used any violence to get her there. But there was no more to that, so that was where that ended. And then for the last one, there was a lot of accounts of people seeing Mary with some tall, well-dressed man on many occasions, like she was having an affair.
Those tall, well-dressed men.
Right.
Gotta watch out for him.
And they said he had a dark complexion too. So one of those instances being the night of the murder, a keeper at an inn nearby said they were at the establishment and that they left and they headed for the woods. And then soon after they heard a woman scream. But because the inn was a place of questionable characters, they didn't really question it because it was a common occurrence.
There were just lots of screams
Just
coming
a
from
lot
it.
of women screaming. So they weren't sure. After the autopsy, Mary, I was hoping you weren't going to notice. like nobody else listening would have heard me say that.
Yes, they would have.
Anyways, after the autopsy,
Yep.
Mary was buried in Hoboken, but not for too long because her body was exhumed a short time later and re-examined for further examination. So, which that also had the press going wild. And I found an article from the New York Evening Post stating, the body of this unfortunate girl was yesterday brought from Jersey to the city and deposited in the death house in the park, which I'm assuming that's like a
corner or like a
something like a corner, but
the death house in the park.
House in the park. That's literally, this is copied and pasted. And difficult it would be before the most imaginative mind to conceive a spectacle more horrible or humiliating to humanity. There lay what was but a few days back the image of its creator, the loveliest of his works, now blackened and decomposed mass of putrefaction, painfully disguised sight and smell. Her skin, which had unusually fair, was now black as that of a Negro. Her eyes so sunk in swollen face as to not have the appearance of being violently forced beyond the sockets with her youth, which no friendly hand had close in death, was distended as wide as the ligaments of the jaw would admit, and wore the appearance of a person who had died from suffocation or strangulation. The remainder of the person was alike the mass of putrefaction and corruption on which the worms were reveling at their will. So yeah, that was from the New York Evening Post, which I thought was
up. It's a really interesting way to describe how her body looked after exhumation.
Right, but even like the way they worded that, and then they put it in the newspaper
Yeah.
It's just really interesting because
Yeah.
I mean today it's the same shit that they put on Dateline, right? But I feel like putting that in the newspaper is so...
It's just like a modern way to say the same shit. Yeah.
Right.
Except that was like old school English.
To this day, Mary's murder has never been solved, and the killer still remains out there.
He's dead.
No, he doesn't. It's David. His name is David, right?
Daniel.
Daniel.
Daniel Payne.
So,
It was Daniel.
What?
yeah, this is our first unsolved murder. Dun, dun,
Oh my God. Did you guys ever watch Unsolved Mysteries?
Oh my God, I loved it.
The music.
I loved that man's voice was so creepy.
So creepy. I grew up with that and it scared the fuck out of me. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I have one really interesting fact is that Mary's story intrigued everybody at the time. And being that one of the cigar shop patrons was Edgar Allan Poe, he was so fascinated by the case that he claimed that his story, The Mystery of Mary, I don't even know how to say this part, Roget, was based on her life. Although he changed the story from New York to Paris, and the story was of a woman whose body was found in the river Seine with several possible suspects.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, Mary.
I know.
I wonder if it was Daniel Payne, because I could see how he would be upset that she, died and then went to the same spot that she was last in, apparently, and then, took his own life. But I could also see him maybe being regretful.
Yeah.
That maybe he, they got into a little thing and.
Right. We'll never know.
Goodness.
And nobody has known since the 1800s.
1800s. And they're never going to know because that's a while ago.
It was.
At this point. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Mary,
a couple years.
Mary. I kind of want to go to the spot now in Hoboken.
In Hoboken, yeah. The photos of it is super creepy because it's like this entrance, this Gothic styled entrance.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find any photos, recent photos of what it looks like inside.
Did you put a photo of it on the cover art?
Yeah, there's an illustration of it on the
That's
cover.
That's what I thought. Okay, cool. All right, well.
So that's
nice job, bub.
Yeah. All right, well, what do you got? What's your story this week?
Okay. So I know that we're going to do, our podcast is called Homocide, but we're not really just talking about gay people who murder, but we're giving you a little gay spin on murder in general. But this week, mine is both LGBTQ and a murder in New York.
Lead up just to lead up just to say that you have a
so basically
murder.
A lot of people know this because some movies have been made from it. There's documentaries and more, but I've always been fascinated by it because of a gay kid coming out in the early 2000s. This is about the Club Kid Killer.
It's a good one. It's
so
a good story.
Do any of you know the Club Kid Killer at all? This is magic. Okay. So
the movie was so good too.
So good. Yeah. This is the murder of somebody named Andre Angel Melendez, who was the victim. The cool thing about this specific thing, and I'll get into kind of the history about the Club Kid movement and all this kind of stuff, but there's been a documentary made called Party Monster, which was eventually turned into a film that starred Macaulay Culkin and Seth Green. It is a fantastic.
They do really great in it too.
Oh my God, they're incredible. Which
it's
I
like
didn't
a cult
know,
kind of classic.
But I thought that the two characters that were in it, who Macaulay Culkin and Seth Green play, were two different characters than what they actually play. Like one of them I knew, but the other one, which was Seth Green's character, I thought was somebody else. But it ended up being James St. James, who I'll talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, there's been a couple of other things. There's James St. James did a memoir called Disco Bloodbath. And then there's another more recent documentary called Glory Days, Daze, The Life and Times of Michael Alig, which gets me to...
But James St. James is the James St. James of World of Wonder, which is...
Correct.
The production company of RuPaul's Drag Race?
RuPaul's Drag Race, among many other types of things. This is actually kind of cool. And if you're in New York City now or were in the 80s and 90s, you will know who they were, or you'll know exactly these kind of landmarks in this movement. The Club Kids, which was actually a term that was coined by New York Magazine. I thought that they created the term.
Oh, they didn't?
No, according to several things. But yeah, New York Magazine is actually who coined them the term Club Kids in 1988. So the Club Kids consisted of a bunch of New York underground partiers who were known for drug use, wild parties, artistic, queer, and gender fluid freedom, an expression, flamboyant behavior, and very avant-garde and outrageous looks. They were a group of very brave and resilient people who put themselves out into the world unafraid of others' judgment. So if you think about the 80s and 90s, particularly at the time, art was really coming splash. Obviously, we're coming off of some drug movements, but queerness was really...
Well, it was
at the
uprising
forefront.
kind of at that point where it wasn't as well, it wasn't illegal at that time.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Right?
Ish. But it was a time of discovery, I think is probably the way that I would put that. But this same group they were known for living these extravagant lifestyles, but they would go and put themselves onto talk shows and face
Sally
really
Jesse Raphael.
Yes. Oh my God, the Sally yeah. But like face some really, really rough questioning in general, but they purposely would do that to like spread this movement of forcing acceptance. And so they would travel the country and hold outrageous parties, always pushing the boundaries of gender, politics, society, and culture. My kind of people. This group, the Club Kids, had a huge impact on the queer culture. Mm-hmm. And so, any young queer people research this because it's incredible. And actually, this particular murder is why the movement ended, which I didn't totally know.
And I think there's like some form of Club Kids still around.
Sure.
I mean, we even just walked by a bunch of people on the street yesterday where I was like, they're definitely Club Kids.
You did, yeah, because they were just like done up and painted.
Oh, they looked amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
I wish I had that confidence walking down the street.
100%.
Like in my normal clothes.
Like now or then. This group actually were so impactful because they created a space for rejected and disowned youth that were gay, queer, transgender, non-binary, really anything that was different or made them, they would make them feel different. But really they were kicked out by their parents and all this kind of stuff. But it was, they created a space for these types of people, our people, to experience the feeling of freedom. Mm-hmm. So freedom from expression, freedom from gender, just all of it. I love that.
And it wasn't all based off of drugs, right?
No, and in fact, it actually wasn't primarily based off of drugs initially. But when you think about when it started, drugs really came to the forefront, mostly these types of drugs in the 80s.
Yeah, the party drugs.
Early 90s, that party drug era. So the interesting thing about the Club Kid movement too is that it was actually built out of a need for relief due to the 80s and conservative politics that were kind of about in the 80s, but also to really not move away from, but deal with the AIDS crisis that was crippling the LGBTQ community at the time.
Yeah, so I was going to say that's right. That's prime.
Totally prime. Yeah. Technically, the New York Club Kids were first established in this context in the late 80s by a guy named Michael Alig and James St. James. But other notable names that were included in this movement were RuPaul Charles, right? RuPaul, Julie Jules, DJ Kioki, and Ernie Glam. Some of those names I'm not familiar with, but now I am, but I wasn't. But obviously RuPaul being probably the biggest that most people these days would be yeah. The movement actually grew into the 90s with Amanda Lepore and Wallpaper and Sophia Lamar. Wallpaper? Not like wallpaper, like you're putting wallpaper up.
Like that was somebody's nickname.
Apparently somebody named Wallpaper.
How do you get the nickname Wallpaper?
I think we should ask whoever Wallpaper is.
Very interesting.
This one person, Michael Alig, is really kind of a notable character in the rise of the Club Kid movement. Realistically, when Andy Warhol died in 1987, the New York club scene that was happening during then, so right, like Studio 54, all that time period, which was like 70s into that, kind of died.
Yeah.
And so out of a need to kind of revitalize that, this guy, Michael Alig, teamed up with his friend, James St. James.
Yeah, see, I don't think I knew that about Andy Warhol.
Me neither.
I knew he was big and had all these extravagant parties and stuff, but I didn't realize that was like the Club Kid era for them.
So it was like the pre-Club Kid era. It was the like original that brought in sort of that freedom of expression and all that kind of stuff that actually pushed Michael Alig to team up with James St. James and then grow it. So they basically started hosting these really kind of small parties and gatherings where people were able to have avant-garde kind of costumes and paint their face and like just do these really fun, extravagant things to feel artistic in like their body. Michael Alig started working with a known club owner of several clubs called Peter Gaytine or something. And he was known as the king of New York clubs. Yeah. And so they teamed up and then they started throwing a whole bunch of parties at this Gayton-owned New York City clubs. So you want to know what one of the most popular ones ended up being was the Limelight on 6th and 20th.
Which is that old church.
Yes.
Which is now like a mall or
I think
was
that
a
there's
shop.
like a pizza.
There was a Grimaldi's in it.
I think Grimaldi's is still in it, in a portion of it, But it was that like shopping.
Oh, it was beautiful.
It was like a clothing store. It was a club.
But like how fun going to an old church to party.
Which actually downtown Denver used to have a club called The Church. And it was fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Oh, it still has it? Yeah. Oh my God, I thought it closed. Shut the fuck up. Oh my God, it's really cool. Limelight is a very different style of church.
Well, it's a Gothic church.
Yes, but the one in downtown Denver, they made the inside kind of cool.
Like
it's a fucking cool place. Anyway, but Limelight, I kind of envision, because I didn't get to go to it, in that.
Yeah.
And what it looks like then. But the Limelight was on 6th and West 20th, and it was basically a deconstructed church, right? So that was owned by this guy named Peter Gayton. Really cool thing. So basically kind of envision it, right? So it's a whole bunch of like basically misfits that get together and like celebrate music and love and have these
like
outrageous
community
costumes
of artists.
and God,
yeah.
And it's all like queer people and just the acceptance of, non-gender conforming people. It was just fucking incredible. The interesting thing about what they would throw, and this is what I was telling you that I was going to tell you about that I didn't know, is something called an outlaw party. Do you know what that is?
I mean, my mind goes to like a party of just criminals.
Okay, I love that your mind went there, but no. So basically,
you're wrong.
They would throw these things called outlaw parties, which basically what they would do. Now, envision yourself in New York City, right? New York, there's...
I mean, I am.
can't.
Well, we are in New York City. For all of you not in New York City, if you've been here, the grid is laid out specifically, but there's a lot of fast food chain restaurants. There's train stations everywhere, right? On particular lines and whatever. So in Chelsea, which is where this was, they would... basically find the clubs that they would be usually throwing parties at, right?
Yeah.
They would choose a fast food joint or a train station somewhere near the club, and they would throw an outlaw party, which basically means they would flood the fucking area, loud music, outrageous costumes, which was illegal. They were outlawed, right? So they called them outlaw parties.
Oh my God, how fun.
And what they would do, they would stage them by a club, because then once the cops would come, they could all fucking flee
and say that they were at
keep
the club.
partying
Oh my God, that's
at
amazing.
the club. I was like,
imagine working at like behind the counter at McDonald's being like, what the fuck
I know,
is
that was
happening?
my first thought as somebody who has worked in food in the food industry, being like, okay,
You're like there and
I
it's
guess
all-
this is
it's like-
happening.
But like on the flip side, it's also like, wait, I'm gonna have to clean this all up.
You're like, this is so fun and all,
I
but
love this.
I
But
wanna
when you
go
guys
Would it
home.
not be on my shift?
I'm going to have to clean up all that glitter.
Could you go to Taco Bell instead?
Oh my God. I loved it though, because I'm like, how fucking cool. Like I
All
imagine
decked
myself.
out, and you're like,
Yeah, but I imagine
avant-garde
myself
feel
in
and-
that time and like the idea of like this outlaw thing, but it's just so built in
community.
community.
Yeah.
In love and like just celebration of life. And I was like, that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
So they would all go and do these things. And so they were kind of known for like this, whatever, but it was like an underground thing. So only the club kids knew
when it was gonna happen.
when it was happening.
That's so fun.
But the cops kind of would catch on ish, and they would go like break it, and they would catch nobody really, because they would all be
Yeah.
fucking gone. So
That's so cool.
really cool. So the interesting thing about the club kids is that they achieved high status and basically ruled the New York club scene. So if you think about like the Studio 54 era and all that kind of stuff, take that, and the club kids owned that, all led by this Michael Alig.
Yeah. So this was like at the same time that up in Harlem there was the Vogue.
Oh yeah. So interestingly enough, so like ballroom.
The ballroom
and,
scene.
like,
That was
ballroom
at the
scene.
same time, right?
No,
Or is
it-
that like right?
That was like
towards
pre.
the end.
It was pre. Yeah. So
Really?
the ballroom scene, it was kind of at the same time, but the ballroom scene was actually a little bit earlier, because this like started 1987 and up. Ballroom was still actually earlier
87,
than that.
yeah. Which ballroom's still around,
Totally. Yeah.
but not
that-
like it was like depicted in pose.
Sure.
Let's say.
Yeah. All that to say, Michael Alig, who was this horrible dude. Now, I'm sure we'll get some shit for saying that, because there's definitely still club kids that are like alive today, and like really, he did a lot for the community in general, but he was a fucking dick. He was known as a shock artist. Do you know what a shock artist is?
Was like
Banksy's
doing very
kind of-
graphic things or
Yeah,
to,
well,
to
kind
shock
of.
and alarm.
Yeah, there's a
people.
lot of like shock value. Banksy
Yep.
is one, right? No-ish as one. So March of 1996. So remember, he kind of started this movement in 87, and then here we're in 1996. So he's become a very popular dude.
Yeah.
But he was known for his horrible, nightmarish behavior.
Yeah.
Like awful. So here's a couple of things that he would fucking do. He would go up into a club, in like the rafters of a club, and he would take $100 bills and he would just throw them out. And he would sit up there and watch as everybody would fight over these $100 bills that were landing on the dance floor, because these were all, not people who had money. And like, he basically loved just seeing everyone,
Brawl.
fighting each other over these $100
that's so
bills.
kind.
Right?
At first, I was like, "Oh my God, that's so nice. He's giving money out."
Hell no, that's not
No,
what, that's
that
not
was
the purpose.
not. That's not it.
So the other thing he would do, and this is disgusting, and he would, in the same rafters, pee on people below him because he thought it was funny. He would
I'm not
also
into that.
That's vile.
Thank you.
I'm not into water sports.
Ew.
No,
but he would
you.
also just pee in
Not to
people's
say that it's a
drinks.
bad thing if you're into it.
No,
like
live
that's
your
your
life.
thing. Do it. It's just
Live your
not
life.
for me.
Sure.
You have to opt in, though.
Right.
You can't do that if you
Consent.
know it or not.
Consent.
Right. Like ask me if you could pee on me before you
Yeah.
just do it. Right?
Do what you need to do, but there needs to be consent, and there are things off limits. He would also pee in people's drinks, just for fun.
Like,
So
and they had no idea. So
Yes.
they're just drinking his piss.
So think about the type of person he is. He likes
He's
seeing.
a jokester,
No,
but like a douchebag.
like he is awful. Like he liked the idea
He's
of
sinister.
knowing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So
It
anyway,
sounds pretty calculated to
the
me.
other thing he would do, and this tells you everything you know about him. Okay, there was this certain thing. Oh, I didn't include the word because I'm like, who's gonna know this word? But there's a term for.
I guess none of us will know the word.
No, you won't because I didn't put it in here. Shit. I can't remember. But anyway, he would basically purposely do a big and fake fall to purposely knock people over to let them get hurt. And there's a term for this. But that's
Asshole?
who he was.
So it's like he was doing a trust fall, but nobody knew that he was doing a trust fall.
No,
Or
not
he
even
was
that.
just like
He would just be like, oh, goodness, and then knock people over.
just to hurt
and
them.
they would hurt. Yeah, they would fall. And he would just be like, and walk away.
Yeah. Sounds like a murderer.
Fucker. Anyway, okay. So apparently he was diagnosed with, which I've never heard this, histrionic personality disorder, which is basically, it's characterized by like high levels of attention-seeking behavior. So those things, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? That he's like wanting this shit or whatever. It's fucking weird. By March 9th, so think about the club scene was like so fun and free and whatever. His
Except for this
behavior,
one guy.
well, it wasn't as bad initially, and then it started to just really not get great. Then drugs came to play. By 1996, March of 1996, the club scene had turned kind of dark, and people were far too into drugs. They were like fucked out.
It's kind of a bummer though. Yeah,
I know. And they just looked like they were out of their minds at these parties. Like people were just fucked. So like kind of, this is awful to say, but around New York City, and it's not only New York City, but across the world, you have people who they have a specific drug and I don't know what it is, but you see the people who are just bent over and like swaying on the street.
It's like a zombie drug. I
It's
don't
like a
know what
zombie-
it's
it's
called, but they're
fucking
calling
weird.
it the zombie drug.
Okay, so it kind of made me picture that, right?
Yeah.
So people just looked just fucked up. And I hate singing, it's awful, but kind of reminds me of that. So what was interesting is that Michael Alig, again, the guy with St. James that had created this kind of movement, turned into a junkie and he was binging every night. And get this, on a mixture of heroin, Special K, I don't even know what this is, ROHYPNOL, Rofinol, I don't know, and cocaine. Like that mixture.
So that sounds fun.
So
Like,
who's
no.
fucked up? Yeah, mama was not.
I think just one of those is fine.
Yeah, like do some coke, go to the, do
If
whatever
you need
to
more
do.
than that, then maybe
Like girl.
maybe you need
So
some help.
what was interesting was that he was living in a luxury 2-bedroom rental on the riverbank on West 43rd Street, but his apartment had become like a crack den. So although he lived in like this like luxurious place, it was just like a drug den. Like people cracked out all the time and all this kind of stuff. That's kind of according to a lot of accounts of people that knew him then. Sunday, March 17th, 1996, the murder. Here, I'll kind of go back. So earlier in the morning, 2 a.m., Alig had instructed Melendez. So remember who I talked about at the beginning? This Angel. Yeah. Angel's his name, but Andre Melendez.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't he go by Angel?
He did. And he did because like one of the things he was known for wearing was like this hat and these like
angel wings.
Yeah. And he was,
I mean, if you look him up, that's all you'll see is him with angel wings on.
Angel, which I always think it's like, because there's so much information about Michael Alig because he's the murderer, but there's like not a ton of information on Angel, which I think is shitty. And I tell you, I have so many sources listed here, and I could not find much information on Angel, which is really, really frustrated. But
well, that's all it ever is. Whenever there's a murder, it's mostly about the person who did it, not
the actual
not
person
who
was
actually
killed.
died, which
the victim.
It's kind of fucked up.
I know.
And the fact that we can't just like, I don't want to say celebrate their life, but in the sense,
well, murder has come.
Life.
I mean, we're doing a murder podcast. It's kind of become like this.
I know, but
it's really interesting.
We could be better murder podcaster.
So Angel Andre Melendez. So he was born on May 1st, 1971. His family was from Colombia and they moved to New York City when he was 8. And so he was kind of described as like a really quiet boy and very shy. And he dreamed of becoming an actor and a filmmaker, which I can absolutely relate to.
And I'm sure being a part of the Club Kid system helped get him out of all that.
Yeah. So here's what's fucked up though. So he was a 25-year-old club kid who lived in Queens, right? But he was a part of the Webster Hall crowd, which I know Webster Hall, but I didn't know that there was like a Webster Hall crowd. Well, here's the thing about the Webster Hall crowd. They were kind of rejected by the club kids.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a delineation between them.
Yeah, I didn't either. So he was never really fully accepted by Alig and his friends. So he wasn't treated that great. He actually worked at the Limelight and other clubs, including Webster Hall, and he was a drug dealer. So he would sell the drugs on the premises of the clubs. So here's what's fucked up about how that whole thing went down. There's a whole FBI thing because of that owner, Peter. All of his clubs, they had knowingly started selling drugs. So it was becoming like this whole corrupt thing, right? So he was a part of that. So he would go to these clubs and get paid for the night to sell drugs. So jumping back to March 17, 1996, 2:00 a.m., Melendez, Angel, went to the Limelight to get into the club to start to get paid like he would all the time to sell drugs. Well, Alig, who was kind of like this ring leader at this point for these clubs, told the bouncers to not let him in. And it happened like 2 other nights, I guess, previous to this too. So they owed him some money because that's how he got paid. So the reason that, and this comes from Michael Alig, that he says that he didn't let them in, or he instructed the bouncers not to let him in, was because the FBI was looking into it and they had said that they would come that night to arrest a whole bunch of people. And so he was like, no drugs tonight or whatever. Yeah, okay. Right? That's what he says. That happened a few nights in a row, like I said. So that particular day, March 17th.
So the FBI was going to come multiple days in a row?
Apparently.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a couple things that a lot of this account is from him, which is kind of annoying to me, but it's, it is what it is because he, you'll see. By 10 a.m. that next morning on March 17th, Melendez went to Alig's front door and was like, give me the money. Angel would sometimes stay with Alig in general. So they were like on and off again roommates, which I think is really interesting. So
they were roommates, which means they had some familiarity, but they also didn't want him to come and be a part of the club.
It like doesn't make any sense. There's not only one killer in this story. There's actually 2. So Michael Alig and Robert, who was known as Freeze Riggs. Okay. At the apartment that morning, Michael and Robert were at this apartment when Angel starts being like, give me, the money and all that kind of stuff. What happened first, and this again is mostly from Michael Alig's account, Angel came in and Freeze immediately started making fun of his hat and wings. And so, which is something I guess they would do, which is fucked up. Alig actually describes this next part as like a silly, pushy cat fight, which I think is incredibly offensive once you hear what happened.
Cat fight.
Yeah. But basically, Alig says that Riggs told Melendez, we only let you hang out with us because you have drugs, which I think is in the movie.
I'm pretty sure that was the movie.
So according to Alig, there was a scuffle which sent him, Michael, flying into a glass cabinet. And I put, okay.
Well, but also like if he was a drug dealer and you're saying you're not going to pay him.
Yeah.
Like that's
rude.
You should get your ass kicked. Like you should be throttled.
You should be throttled. Oh my God, Brandon. So anyway, there was this scuffle, right? And Alig is saying that basically Melendez or Angel sent him into this glass cabinet and that a piece of glass pierced his back and he started bleeding profusely, which led to Melendez.
It was just like a little scratch.
Or it didn't happen. But basically he says that Melendez started biting him. Okay. Because of that scenario, Freeze, the other guy that was in the apartment, grabbed a hammer that just happened to be lying around. But also I said there was like a different account that it was like in a closet. Okay. And started hitting Angel in the head with what they say. Freeze kind of tells a different version of this a little bit than Michael Alig did, but basically hit him in the head with like not the metal part of the hammer, but like the handle, like 4 times. He hits him with that, which incapacitates him, right? Didn't kill him, but it like knocked him down and whatever. It's alleged at this point that there's a lot here, but basically what Alig ended up doing was, I guess, getting a sweatshirt and wrapping it around his fist and just beating Angel's face in. And then eventually just suffocates him. But in the same process, decides to fuck around and injected him with Drano into his veins.
Oh, I remember that.
And then he takes Drano and shoves it into his throat and duct tapes his mouth shut. And then they're like...
And I'm sorry, what did you say he called this? Like a cat fight?
Uh-huh.
This is a cat fight.
A silly cat fight.
I've never had Drano near my cat. I'm just kidding. That was stupid.
That was really funny. That was your dad.
You're welcome. That was my dad
cute.
joke.
All right, Wayne. That's really funny. So fucked up, right? So just imagine this scene. It's just like disgusting. So then they're like, well, we thought he was just sleeping. You just put Drano and okay.
So that's poison.
Yeah. So they say that they laid him on the couch after thinking that he was just unconscious, but then realized he was dead a few hours later. They claim, just originally in general, that this was self-defense.
So you wouldn't be like, oh, he's not moving. Let's just let him lay here for a few hours and we'll see. Were they fucked up at the time?
Yes. So they were on drugs, for sure. Like always on drugs.
Well, all of the 12 that you listed.
Yes. However, there are accounts by several people in the Club Kid, collective, that actually say that Alig was talking about killing Angel before that.
Oh, so it makes it look premeditated-ish.
Yeah, but still saying no,
But why? Why
self-defense.
this guy? Just because he didn't want to pay him for the drugs?
There's actually an account that there was something about Angel that challenged Alig's status, and now he owed him money.
Well, it's popularity too. If he's the guy with the drugs, he looks more.
We'll also think about this
than,
attention-seeking thing, right? So and they do this in the movie where Angel's portrayed as this amazing kind of character, and I'm sure he was, but it takes away from this popularity and whatever. So that's kind of a theory. But here's what's interesting, and this is not done. After the murder, they decided to, after they realized he was dead, they decided to cover up the murder because they just didn't want the party to end. And I literally said whatever the fuck that means.
Right. No, they just didn't want to get caught for what they did.
Yeah. So what they did,
your party of life, you don't want that to end.
So they took Angel, his body, and they put him into their bathtub, doused him in Drano. I don't know what their obsession was with Drano, and baking soda, and I quote, a few liberal spritzes of Calvin Klein Eternity Cologne. Which we all know what the fuck that smells like.
That's right. The gayest thing too.
Yeah. They covered him with ice and left him in the bathtub for 8 to 9 days. And
that is disgusting.
They threw parties at the apartment with his body in the bathroom.
Did nobody have to use the bathroom?
That was my question too.
Was there more than one bathroom?
I don't know. I mean, it's a luxury apartment.
Eventually, I'm sure that there's a smell that comes, but
sure.
I guess if there's a lot of Drano, that chemical smell might.
Ugh, it's so disgusting. Anyway, so once they kind of got out of their little bit of drug stupor that they were in at the time, they decided, oh my gosh, we should probably get rid of his body, right? Because it was starting to smell in the apartment. Freeze went to Macy's, the little
I know
shop.
what you're going to say, and I hate this.
And went to Macy's and bought some kitchen knives and came back to dismember his body. This is how Alig talks about it. We did it. This is a quote from him to the New York Post. He said, we did it quickly, cutting at the joints. There was really no blood because it had all dried.
Because it was 8 days.
So what they did was they put his legs in a duffel bag and put his head and torso into a TV box and hopped into a cab.
Oh my gosh.
Went down to the river at the Intrepid, which is where they threw the duffel bag. And then they went to 26th Street at the Hudson and threw in the TV box into the river. So the interesting thing is that after this, Alig walked around for months bragging about killing him. But because everyone was so used to him being so outrageous, they didn't believe him. Yeah. They were like, whatever, he's just saying that for attention.
That's so fucked up.
Which is really interesting.
You got to imagine somebody telling you that and you being like, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Melendez's brother, and here's what's fucked up about New York City at that time, especially for the LGBTQ community.
The police
didn't give a fuck.
No.
Right? So basically he went missing, nobody could find him, and the police were like, okay. His brother, Melendez's brother, so Angel's brother, Johnny, started pasting up posters all over Manhattan trying to look for him and trying to force the police to be like, please help me find my fucking brother. Right. But of course they just didn't give a fuck. So this is just a side note that apparently Alig, there's some talks about motives in general, but he basically stole, I guess, $2,000 from Melendez. And then after he killed Angel Melendez, he stole another $18,000 from his personal drug money stash to refurbish his apartment. Refurbish.
So he's just an overall great dude.
I know. Yeah. We're peeing in people's drinks. And then April 12th, 1996, Melendez's legless torso washes ashore in Staten Island. A group of kids finds it. Now, could you imagine playing and being like, yay, oh my God. Yeah.
That is awful.
Awful.
That is so awful.
So it's April 12th. Now, does everybody know who Michael Musto is? He's a reporter for the Village Voice.
No. The name kind of sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's RuPaul was really, Anyway, he's still actually a reporter for The Voice. Yeah. For the Village Voice. So anyway, he actually did a piece reporting the rumors about Alig's involvement in Melendez's death in a Village Voice column. He didn't use any names, but everyone knew it was him. So he did that piece, right? So that's April 26th. Fast forward to November 2nd of 1996. Melendez's remains were finally identified with dental records. And that's because another body was found in the Hudson. And they were like, oh yeah, we have that Jane Doe, right? or John Doe.
So they didn't even like test to see.
Not at the time. No. His remains were identified with dental records. And then November 1996, now because of the Village Voice piece and all these other things and talks or whatever, they kind of knew, Alig and Freeze, right? November of 1996, Riggs was arrested and confessed immediately. And Riggs was Freeze.
Yeah.
Was arrested and confessed immediately. And then shortly after that, Alig was also arrested and confessed, but claimed self-defense.
So dumb.
There was no trial, really, because the FBI were trying to go after that Peter guy, the club owners. So they didn't want to charge these guys with first-degree murder because they wanted them to go and...
Because it was better for them to get the club kids out.
October 1996, prosecutors were hesitant to charge them, both of them, with first-degree murder because they wanted them to testify against their former boss, Peter Gayton. So both of them eventually took a plea deal, pleading guilty to manslaughter and only being sentenced to 10 to 20 years.
So fucked up.
Yeah.
And I remember the news of him getting out of prison, which to me is, if you're convicted of murder, you shouldn't be.
If you dismember a person, you should not
Thank you.
be able to be in society.
If you know how it feels like to cut a body up, you should not be able to be around bodies.
Unless you're a surgeon.
Yeah.
Okay, so March 2010. All right. So remember, they got October 1997 is when they, did the whole thing and pled guilty to manslaughter, which is just outrageous.
It's just so crazy to me that it's legal for the justice system to say, oh, you murdered this person, but I need your confession for something else. So I'm going to give you a better deal and fuck everybody that has to go through that trauma of losing somebody.
Well, just Angel's family. I mean, that's
just for their own gain, so that they look better for their bosses. It's all fucked up.
So, and just remember the kind of person he was. No, he was awful.
Yeah, he was a great person.
Interestingly enough, Robert Riggs, he was released on parole for good behavior in March of 2010. So he actually remained on probation until November 2016. So really the person who ended up killing him was Alig because he was just kind of unconscious from being hit in the head. Yeah. And then, but
the actual murderer was.
Yeah.
Alig.
But then they both dismembered his body along with.
He's more of like an accomplice.
Correct.
To the murder.
Yeah. But they both obviously dismembered his body together. And then when they were doing.
I'm sorry. I don't know if I know anybody in my life that I'd be like, I would cut up a body for you.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I love you. I would do anything
bitch, I would
for
turn
you.
you in.
I would be like, what the fuck are you doing,
Yeah,
Kevin?
bye. Yeah, gross. No, but basically they did it along with 10 bags of heroin or something like that, or cocaine. Robert Freeze, so he was on probation until November of 2016, so he was out. What's interesting about him is that he actually went on to get a BA in anthropology from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And received a fellowship to pursue a PhD in sociology from NYU.
Oh, that's interesting.
So now he's an associate researcher for a prison initiative at Bard College in New York and maintains a super low profile, which I think is really, really interesting.
It is interesting.
Because May of 2014, Alig was paroled after serving 17 years in prison.
That is not enough.
And came back to New York City.
Yeah.
And claimed to be rehabilitated and tried to have a resurgence.
I remember that
locally.
I remember there was a lot of
we lived here then.
Press. Yeah, there was a lot of press, and
we live here now. But
even World of Wonder did a lot of like stories about him at the time, and like they wanted to try to help him to.
Yeah, he was like trying to pitch all this kind of shit. Yeah, or whatever.
And it also doesn't feel like it was that long ago. Like it feels like it was just a couple years ago.
So what's interesting though is not May, but in 2017, Alig finished his parole. That's when he tried to resurrect himself. But he was in the gay scene here. Yeah, he was like going out. He had a curfew of 8 p.m. purposely, I'm sure that the parole board did. So he couldn't really be out, but he still was. Like he was still out in the community. Like it's crazy. So
perfect time for sirens to go off too.
100%. If you can hear that. Fast forward a little bit, December of 2020, Alig actually died over not too far from where we live here on the Upper West Side, just a little bit further up, of a drug overdose at age 54.
Is it bad that I want to say good?
No, I mean, I completely agree. And this is what's really annoying to me. When I started researching this, every fucking article that I could find was really only about him and his death and his impact on the whatever. Which, yes, he had a huge impact on the LGBTQ culture and certainly the club kid and just like creating these spaces for
but not people. Everybody who...
But it doesn't negate.
Yeah, no. Just because you've done things and you've helped a community doesn't mean that you're a good person if you've killed somebody
You're an asshole.
for no fucking reason.
You are a fucking asshole. Also, you owed him money, you bitch. This was your fault. Oh,
And if you haven't seen the movie, you should really go see it because it's actually really good.
Yeah, and actually, I want to, now that I know about this other documentary that's actually streaming right now, I don't know what on, but that Glory Days, the life and times of Michael Alig, I do want to watch it, even though it's about him, because I want to.
Well, it's so interesting. Even hearing it from him is like, it gives you a different perspective on who he was as a person.
Yeah.
You get to realize even more how shitty he is.
Yeah. But it's also interesting to like think about the landscape of Chelsea now, because like the new gay area is now in like Hell's Kitchen area realistically. But even when I first moved here, it was still very much in Chelsea, but that area is just so different now. Yeah. So even where the Limelight was, think about the club kids in that area.
Yeah.
When we saw that guy last night, it was in Hell's Kitchen.
It was
like on 56th Street.
It was, yeah.
So it's very much different in general from what it was before. So I wish I could go back and like see a little bit
and experience it.
Yeah, that time. And it's funny because I came out in 2004, and 1996, 2004. It's not that long in really. General.
What,
and
8 years?
Yeah, and I don't remember. I mean, I was, in a northern Colorado country town as a gay kid, so it's not like I was very close to New York.
It was much different.
Yeah, but it's interesting just the impact of the gay culture, because you think about it now. RuPaul's Drag Race. RuPaul was a part of that.
Yeah,
was a part of that group.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of content.
I remember seeing some YouTube videos on the shows that they would go on, and RuPaul was one of the many people up there talking about being a club kid and this and that.
Yeah,
it's actually really interesting to just do like a little dive onto YouTube on them. And I'm pretty sure Sally Jose Raphael did have them on.
I'm pretty sure Sally did. That was
and
also
like
was Jerry Springer then on then?
I don't think Jerry Springer was on then.
I can't remember.
But it was like Maury Povich. I think
Montel Williams. Oh my God.
And there was Ricky Lake.
Oh my God, Ricky Lake.
Uh-huh.
Oh God, those shows were fucking weird.
Like, I used to actually like love coming home from school because we were latchkey kids. Back in the day, my parents just had
I don't know what latchkey
kids means that you didn't like you were trusted at your house without supervision. So like we didn't have.
Oh, I've never heard of that term.
Yeah, latchkey. I don't.
It's a generational.
It is.
Thing.
We should actually look it up. I'm sure it probably has some meaning behind it that's better than what I could say. But basically, we didn't have. After school,
TV.
My brother, sister, and I would go home, and we'd be at home by ourselves.
By yourself? Wow.
Until my parents came home. So we didn't have supervision. We didn't have
you and I
people watching us, anything like that.
I mean, I grew up in foster care mostly at that same age that you were. So it was really different. Yeah.
Which I think you can probably get into a lot of trouble if you leave your children at a young age like that at home by themselves.
Well, your brother's like 5 years older than you. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, but this was we were still young.
True.
We still there was one day that my sister wanted to get ice cream out of a Ben and Jerry's container, and instead of doing the smart thing by taking a spoon, she took a steak knife and went right through the container into her hand, and it's gushing blood everywhere. My brother and I were down in the basement working out on the workout equipment. And she's screaming, blood's coming out of her hand. I'm cleaning it up. My brother's trying to call my mom at her office because I don't even think she had a cell phone.
Oh, it was landline, bitch.
Yeah, and then my mom didn't know what was happening until she drove home and she saw an ambulance at our house.
Oh my God, Palma.
Yeah.
I could just imagine how
Wait, was it an ambulance? I think so. Because we called her office and we talked to her boss or something like that.
Oh my God. Yeah. Interesting. Well,
yeah. So that's why you shouldn't be latchkey kids.
No, interesting. Well, wow. There we go.
That was good. That was a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot more that I could have dug in, but I was like, this is a fucked up thing.
It is a fucked up thing.
Yeah. Murder's fucked up in general, but we have fun talking about it.
We do. And this is a good segue to our next episode will be.
Yes.
Which, being that we're Homocide, the podcast of spoken by gay men talking about stories, we're actually going to do queer murders next week.
Yeah, well, queer murderers.
Queer murderers, yes, let's be more specific. Murderers who happen to be queer of some degree.
Yeah, some kind of identifying as queer, which kind of
I'm excited for mine.
Today's was like a crossover.
It was, but
New York and queer, but yeah.
But I loved it because that's such an interesting story.
It's also like a very iconic New York City queer culture murder, which is really, really fucking interesting.
Mine was not queer culture.
No. Oh, that's for sure. You will be hearing this on October 31st. We hope you fucking love it. Be sure to rate us 5 stars.
Yes.
Clearly.
Subscribe to our channels.
Subscribe.
Follow us on TikTok, Facebook.
And just
Instagram.
remember, if you're a dick, we're going to have a segment. We're going to call you out, motherfucker. So don't come onto our platforms and be a bitch because we will call you out.
Or do it.
Because
that'll be fun.
Because it'll be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we welcome that now.
We joked about calling them hate crimes of the week.
Yeah.
So,
oh, Jesus. Anyway.
hopefully we'll get some.
Yeah.
to
Thanks
share.
for listening. And
thank
let's do
you.
a little twinkle moment.
You're such a homo.
Bye.
Bye.